think most people can agree that there are few things better than walking through the front door after a long day at either school or work and being greeted by the lovely aroma of freshly baked chocolate chip cookies. I know this was true for me throughout my childhood, and it is one of the things that instilled in me a passion for baking. Time and time again, I would test different recipes in order to perfect my favorites. However, I was never quite content with my chocolate chip cookie recipe. It wasn't ever quite crunchy enough on the outside or chewy enough in the middle, and it always ended up very cakey. However, this all changed when I walked into my grandparents' house, and I was greeted by that same aroma I talked about earlier. I walked into my grandmother's kitchen, and lo and behold, the perfect chocolate chip cookie sat there. It was perfectly gooey and chewy in the middle and rippled out into a perfectly caramelized outside. In this demonstration, I will show you how to make these unique chocolate chip cookies and compare them to maybe your classic chocolate chip cookie. To start, be sure you have your oven preheated to 375 degrees, your hands are washed, and your hair is up. The equipment we will need for this recipe is a standing mixer with a paddle attachment. However, if you don't have a standing mixer, a hand mixer will work just fine. You will also need a baking sheet with parchment paper. The ingredients we need are 2 1/4 cups of flour, 1 cup of melted butter. Be sure your butter is melted fully though, because that is a very important aspect of our cookie. 1 cup of packed brown sugar, 1 cup of granulated sugar, half a teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 1½ teaspoons of vanilla, 1 egg, and 12 ounces of chocolate chips. To start making our cookies, we will combine our melted butter, our brown sugar, our granulated sugar, our vanilla, and our 1 egg. And we need to mix that all up, starting on low and moving to medium speed. Mix that until it is all combined. The reason melted butter is very important in this cookie is because melted butter contributes more to the richness and the chewiness of a cookie. This is different from softened butter, which contributes more to the structure of the cookie, giving you a more cakey cookie. Next, it is time to incorporate our dry ingredients. So we are going to add our flour. In this recipe, we use less flour than usual because that extra flour also contributes to a cakier cookie. We add our salt, and we add our baking soda. Now it's time to mix that all in. Again, we're starting on a low speed and working our way up. Lastly, we add our chocolate chips. Now it's time to mix those in. Now that our cookie dough is all mixed, we need to scrape our sides of the bowl and our paddle mixture, or paddle attachment, in order to make sure all the cookie dough is ready to be scooped onto our parchment. Ta-da! Now it's time to scoop. To scoop these cookies, I prefer to use a 1½ tablespoon ice cream scoop. However, if you don't have one of these, it is perfectly fine if you use 2 spoons or just your hands. The scooping is done when you have 12 evenly spaced cookie dough balls on your parchment paper. Now, place them in the oven, which is set to 375 degrees, and bake them for 12 minutes. As you can see, these cookies are now done. This recipe made about 3½ dozen cookies. Now that they're baked, you can see the ooey gooey center and the crispier outside in the ooey gooey chocolate. As I mentioned earlier, this is due to the melted butter instead of softened butter, and also the decrease in flour, as opposed to your traditional or classic cookie. These cookies are best stored in an airtight container or frozen. This helps them to be able to keep their crunch on the outside and chew on the inside, which are the two things that make them a unique chocolate chip cookie. Bye!